Welcome to the Technology Pulse podcast, hosted by DALY Computers, providing comprehensive technology solutions to the public and private sectors for more than 35 years. Visit www.daly.com to learn more. Today's episode is brought to you by Microsoft for Education, providing an ecosystem of technology solutions to meet the evolving needs of students, educators, and IT staff. And now here's your host, Rick from DALY.
Joining us today on the Technology Pulse podcast, we have Mitch Doctor from Microsoft making a second appearance. Mitch, it's great to have you back, sir.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me back. I am super excited to chat with you and the listeners again.
Yeah, no, last time we had a great conversation about inclusive classrooms. And again, thought it was great. A lot of great information. We got some really great feedback on it. So this time I wanted to have you back and talk a little bit more about technology, because obviously Microsoft is in the technology business.
What? We do technology? No, I don't believe you.
You haven't heard it, right? You're still using the chisel and the stone tablet.
Yeah, and I'm slide rules. You know how it is.
Yes, I do, because I grew up in that era. Yes, I do. No, seriously, wanted to talk to you about technology though, but really focusing on AI. And I'm going to tell you why. Because AI is getting a really bad rap these days when it comes to the education space. Now, just to give you a little bit of background on the thimbleful of knowledge that I have about this. Recently spoke at one of our local high schools to their technology class, and I talked about AI as far as AI replacing humans. And the great thing was I was able to show some really great demonstrations. Here is a tweet written by an actual person versus a tweet written by ChatGPT. Here's a voiceover by an actual voiceover artist as compared to an AI voice generator. And I basically talked about the fact that AI isn't going to replace humans anytime soon. But what a lot of students really perked up about when I mentioned AI and I mentioned ChatGPT, they all started giving those sly little smiles to each other and saying, yeah, that's what I use to write my papers these days. So AI is kind of a bad term to use, but I'm thinking that there has to be some redeeming value to AI outside of that.
Totally fair. And I think you're right? And we got to remember that AI is just information, right? So I know it's been a big hot topic in education lately, a huge hot topic. I live with an educator. My spouse is an educator in a university, and she has seen things literally in front of her being handed in. And there are new tools that learning institutions are being able to use and deploy, kind of like a counter AI, if you say, that would actually, this made up all of these citations because none of them exist because, AI doesn't look the same way or be able to put things together the same way. So there are some tools out there right now that I know in especially higher education to combat some of this kind of new AI or new generative AI that are able to essentially make assignments and stuff like that. But I think are some huge redeeming qualities around AI. And I think it's really important for listeners and everybody to really understand that AI is a very large end term, right? And Microsoft has really jumped in on the true beginning of this, obviously being able to support the ChatGPT developers at OpenAI, as well as taking a lot of that technology and integrating into the tools that we're truly helping empower students and educators with every day. I know we talked a lot of... Yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, now you're not just talking about, and again, I'm going to show my age here, the little paper clip that used to show up when I was in Microsoft Word. We're not talking about that sort of AI type thing, right?
I love Clippy, but no, we're not talking about Clippy anymore. And we're not talking about, our voice assistant friends that are from all over the place, whether that's Cortana or Amazon's Alexa or anything else for that matter. We're talking about actual AI helping us as a tool to get things done, and not just as a tool to get things done, but allowing us innovative feedback and allowing us to interact with it to truly help further our own knowledge base by interacting with AI tools.
And And it's great to hear that Microsoft is really trying to be at the forefront of this, because a lot of times there's that serious misconception about Microsoft for education. Yes, it's Word, it's Excel, it's PowerPoint, but it's so much more than that. I mean, that's what a lot of people have been trained. This is the Microsoft suite, but it has grown so much since then, particularly in the education space.
Tremendous in the education space, right? When we're looking at our customers who have, Microsoft solution or the Microsoft 365 education solutions, there's so much more than just Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Whether that's OneNote or being able to take surveys via Microsoft Forms, or be able to have their own essentially internal video repository that they can go and be able to use in something like Microsoft Stream, as well as using Minecraft, the actual video game Minecraft, to teach science and coding and different pieces of education, with that all being built in to the exact same license. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and my younger son, huge gamer. And I do remember that he came home one day, he had been bugging us to get to get Minecraft, and my wife and I were sort of on the fence, as cautious parents typically are. And he came home and he goes, "Guess what? I can play Minecraft." And we sort of gave him this curious look and said, "Okay, who told you that?" And he goes, "My teacher." And then he gave us the instructions on Microsoft Minecraft for education. And we were just amazed that this was being used as a teaching tool. But if you really think about it, gamification as a teaching tool is a really effective model when you're
And it's
trying to reach a particular group of students.
And it's also not new, right? We've used gamification education for a very long time to make things fun or interactive. And I think this is truly the next step forward, whether it's using Minecraft or using, some of the game applications that are physically built into Teams for education, that's quizzing or, Jeopardy type-esque games, to be able to play and have it all built in to their interactive digital system that they already have.
Yeah, definitely. And so I have to think that, again, Microsoft being on the cutting edge of these types of things, like you said, you're finding ways to bring AI into the classroom. So let's talk a little bit about that, and tell us about some of the really great things that some of our listeners, or maybe even a lot of our listeners, may not know about, 365 for education, and just exactly what type of, cool little tools and tricks and tips that you have for helping them get the most out of their classroom experience.
Absolutely. So all those awesome instructional tools and whatnot we already kind of talked about, and all the wonderful accessibility and being able to manage everything. That's all really the foundational core of Microsoft 365 for education. But we've really gone a step above that, and we're extending all of those learning tools at absolutely no additional cost whatsoever to every single one of our Microsoft 365 education licensee and holders, by adding an important new category, and we're calling those learning accelerators. Now, learning accelerators are there to help students advance both their foundational skills, meaning reading and mathematics, for instance, as well as being able to develop their future ready skills and prepare them for success, whether it's college or career or beyond.
Now, first of all, I have to say, Learning Accelerators, great title. As
I
a
agree.
marketing guy, game recognizes game. So, definitely a great title. But now, I'm understanding, I think, the foundational, obviously helping with, like you said, reading and math.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting that, but I'm really interested to learn more about, getting students ready for the future. Just what exactly are you talking about here? How do those work?
Sure. So we'll flip it. We'll go backwards. Like, let's talk about our future readiness first, because I think that's always fun. Like, what kind of tools help my students and me get ready for the future? And one of the biggest ones that is relatively new is the Speaker Progress and Speaker Coach. Now, this is the actual Learning Accelerator itself, and it's built into coaches and progress reports essentially. And what is really cool about Speaker Coach and Speaker Progress is it can be accessed through tools like PowerPoint that already exist, and it's building AI functionality into that. For instance, have you in your past ever done something like Toastmasters or taken a public speaking course?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have at this point, right? Now, what if I can have the computer give you on the spot feedback without you having to go in front of anybody by just using your microphone and camera?
No. Really?
Exactly
Wow.
what we're talking about. Speaker Coach allows anybody to practice in real time and get both real time feedback and reports after the fact. So for instance, if maybe you're not the best public speaker or you're working on your public speaking, and let's think, when do we really start talking about public speaking with students? Probably like later middle, even the beginning of high school, and definitely well into college for sure. And I know adults who still work on their public speaking quite often in their everyday careers in life. So what do we use? Well, a tool like Speaker Coach allows them to get that instant feedback, but also will give them things like, hey, did you know you use a lot of filler words like or so or like? Did you know these are ways to improve that? And it'll actually give you said 150 times in this 10-minute presentation. It will actually give you direct and immediate feedback. And then it'll tell you, what's a great way to fix that? Try XYZ, or try different connection tools and whatnot to be able to transition from slide to slide. And it knows where you were on the slide when you move the slides back and forth. And this instant feedback can honestly improve a speaker in a matter of days.
That is phenomenal, because now I have my older son, he's in theater, and so he's constantly having to rehearse his parts. And you find that where he'll go away and he'll do it on his own, and then he comes down and he's ready to do it for an audience. But you could tell he's nervous, he's in front of people. But if he's in front of a device, there's none of that nervousness. There's nobody else in the room. You're not looking at another person thinking they're judging me.
Exactly.
You're really just letting the technology help to coach you. Wow, that probably could have set my radio career ahead by about 10 years.
Isn't that pretty incredible? So I think the other thing to think about here that's really cool is for your son, who obviously isn't presenting like a slide deck, so he could just put up a single slide deck and just speak to a blank slide while still rehearsing, and it would allow him to see his pacing and what words he may or may not have stumbled over, if he went too fast or too slow, and it understands and can give him that reporting, whether it's on the spot or after the fact, for him to review. Oh, well, maybe I should think about my pacing next time, and so on and so forth.
Right. And because that's not something you think about when a lot of times when you're speaking, again, whether you're presenting a slide deck or you're memorizing a poem or something like that, a lot of times you're at that level, you're trying to get through it. You're just trying to power through it. And you don't realize, hey, look, if you just slow down a little bit. And when mom and dad tell you that, or the teacher tell you that, oh, they're picking on me. Well, this time you don't have to, there's no malice. There's no, there's nothing against you. It's the technology telling you straight up, this is how things are.
Exactly. Precisely. And I'm using a tool and incorporating AI into a tool we all use is like PowerPoint, for instance, already. It's a no-brainer. It just makes sense.
I mean, so I'm sitting here with my mind blown. And again, I'm already starting to think about, wow, maybe I need to start using this, because I do find every now and then I go back to the old and ah when I'm trying to speak. But that's phenomenal. So I know you've got something else up your sleeve.
I
You've got
do.
to
And
hit me
this
with something else.
and this one is a game changer when we come to future ready. We know it's all over the news, and the internet is a wonderful place. Let's be honest, and being able to search and find the information we need is hugely important. And I mean, we've seen it all the way back from US politics now for years. How do you know if something's valid? How do you become a cognizant searcher and understanding what you're going after? The idea of search progress and search coach is it's a built-in search tools that's going to allow students and other users to really help build their information literacy skills inside of a secure online search environment without any ads. So it's all just built in within Teams for Education to be able to do that. So these tools are really striving to make students and educators of any way, shape, or form at this matter to be able to make well-educated decisions around the validity of data that they are finding and presented to them on the web.
Now, I've got to say, I've had a lot of experience with that sort of thing, but this is, and I can say this because she doesn't listen to the podcast. This is my wife coming to me constantly and saying, "Did you hear this? Did you see this? No, where did you see that? I found it on this website." And you can just tell it is not the most neutral website. For instance, talking about, when you have a website talking about natural products, they're going to say every soap out there, every shampoo out there is going to give you all kinds of conditions and cause all kinds of problems, but the natural stuff just works so much better. And so you really need, you think that happens with adults. So if you could teach students at the younger levels how to vet this information, you have something that can vet this information so that, again, it's becoming, it's helping them build that skill to understand, okay, look, I'm not going to just take everything at face value because there are some things that are a little more accurate than others, or, it's not just advertising or it's not just opinion. I mean, that's fantastic.
It's pretty incredible, especially when we can think of things like there's a recent study from OECD that released that 1 out of 10 students in grade 7 or higher actually have a hard time distinguishing between fact and opinion when looking at what might come back to them on the web. And I would be willing to put money on it somewhere out there, and I'm sure it exists. Of what does that look like on adults? What does that look like in higher education? If we're saying 7 and higher, was like, what does those numbers look like for everybody else? So I think being able to use a tool and integrate AI into that tool to show validity of the information that they are physically getting from a search tool is a huge advancement in just the overall education. Like, these aren't things we learned in school when we were in school. How to use a search engine effectively and how to understand what is and what is not fact or fiction.
Very true. And when you think about it, any search that you do, and it comes back with millions upon millions of pages.
Yep.
And what do we all do? We go to the first three. And whatever the first three are on the page, those are the ones we're going to click on, and those are the ones we're going to believe. And there are so many algorithms these days. And again, I'm showing my marketing hat here. It's the fact that we all know how those algorithms work, and we position our pages to get on that first page of search terms, whether or not we're really right for that or not, and whether or not it's something, just like you said, whether it's fact or just opinion. And so having something that can give that type of knowledge, can give that type of guidance. I won't even say knowledge, I'll say guidance, because we need that guidance. We need that as a society. We really need to stop fighting over what's fact and what's opinion, because too many times we choose opinion and it's causing a lot of division, whether it's in classrooms, whether it's in office places, whether it's out in the public forum.
I agree. Now, what is really cool when we talk about these AI tools or these learning accelerators is the coaching is great, right? But the analytics that come from it for the educators also really incredible things to also think about. So let's take search progress for instance, and a teacher or an educator could give an assignment. You know, assignment A is go and do a book report on space and how astronauts live in the space station, for instance. And then on that, they can tack on a search progress as another piece of that same project. So, as search progress, they would be doing all the searching within the search progress or search coach within Teams for Education as a part of, say, that lesson. And then if they save a source, they will also then be asked to explain why you save this source and why you think this is a good source. So we're linking that critical thinking and critical learning tools into how they look at these things and being able to explain why or how and how this fits back to the, you know, the first thing that they're looking at is like, oh, I need to do this book report. This is the search for that book report, and therefore being able to connect those dots together. So it goes above and beyond just helping them understand what's valid, but also having them critically think over those search terms and what they're receiving from search, and then how to apply it to an actual application, like a book report, for instance.
Again, fantastic stuff. Now, we've been talking about how this AI technology and how these learning accelerators are there and they're helping students. But we also have to remember there's another side to the coin. There's the educator.
There's
So
educators in education.
there are, just like Microsoft is a technology company, there are
We
educators in education. And thank goodness for that, or you would have one less paycheck coming into your household.
Very true, right?
Exactly. So, so, we talk about the students, and obviously we want to give them everything that we possibly can, but we have to remember
100%.
the folks who really do put, and I'm not going to say this, I don't say this lightly. They put their lives and their sanity on the line, standing up in front of those classrooms every single day, because, whether it's, again, being in a situation where you're tasked with molding the next generations, that's not something that you take lightly. So we've got to give them, first of all the props that we can give them, but second of all, we've got to give them all the tools that we can give them.
Yep.
What does Microsoft have that is going to really help these educators kick things up to the next level?
Yeah, so let's talk about that because I think it's important. And let's talk about how learning accelerators kind of flow. I think that's really important too, right? Learning accelerators are created as part of assignments by a teacher and by an educator. They are the foundational in adopting these accelerators and how they can even help support students. They use, in our examples, of course, Teams for Education to be able to do that. And then when students go to complete the assignments, that's when they'll see these things like the search coach or the speaker coach, or in our example here, we're going to talk about reading progress and reading coach. Then the teacher will be able to review those assignments, and then the teacher can track progress and get different insights and analytics. But you're going to go, okay, great. It just sounds like more work for the teacher. But it's actually not, because teachers can actually set up in reading progress, for instance, they can set up a single assignment for all their students. And when we think about reading assessments, and my mother, I know we've talked about, was a elementary school educator for 35 years in public school. So reading assessments would take hours, if not days, in, say, a first grade class of 20 students, right? Because you got to spend different time with each of those different students, get the feedback, and the teacher's the one writing the feedback and trying to hear what the omissions are and back and forth and what's being repeated. Now, what if we could have a piece of technology that has, I don't know, a camera and a really good microphone attached to it and do that piece of the job for us? Therefore, essentially understanding and being able to assess every student at the same time.
At the same time, like every student. So you're
Every
talking
student.
you're not talking just a classroom of 15 to 20 students. You're talking about I teach 10 classes, they have 20 students, I'm 200 students, same time.
They can all be assessed on obviously their whatever devices are in front of them. So, if you only have 20 devices, you're limited to 20 students at a time, right? And that I think that's obvious, you're right. But you would have to have a device with a webcam and microphone. And the idea is that we're able to use something like reading progress to be able to do this. So a teacher would come up with an assignment, and it's a reading assignment. Maybe it's a paragraph out of a book or whatever. They choose what the assignment might be. There's tons of template assignments for reading progress as well that's already built into Teams for Education. Or, of course, an educator can choose whatever they want for whatever grade level they want and pop it in there. So a student will do their assessment, right, with maybe headphones and a microphone and a webcam. So the AI will be able to physically see their face. It will understand the words that are coming out of their mouth because it is all being captured on microphone. And in an instant, feedback. Immediate feedback with the reading. Words will be highlighted that maybe were omitted or mispronounced or even done really well. The teachers will get immediate analytics and insights for each individual student about omissions or word mispronunciations or how of specific students doing really well. So what does that mean for a teacher? Well, now a teacher can understand from an assessment that maybe they are working with their students and the differentiation between maybe the sound an F makes and the sound a V makes, right? Because when you're young, it's very close, but they can actually assess, hey, do my students understand the difference between an F and a V sound and how to distinguish that? And are they pronunciating that correctly? And that can all be done in reading progress very quickly, allowing an educator to manipulate their lesson plans if need be to either correct or go, hey, my lesson did work and it's been successful in that.
And I have to imagine that this is also something that they could use to even tailor lesson plans to individual students, right? Right down to the individual level to try to help them with different, with different shortcomings, we'll say.
100%, because we also have to remember that most students are not all on the same level in the same classroom. So how do we cater to students who need a little bit more help in maybe getting to that level? And then how do we make sure that maybe accelerated students don't feel bored, right? So we can individualize lesson plans to get an entire class, whether that's to, par or above that bar and moving them forward using tools like reading progress.
Wow, that is amazing. And that goes right back to the first conversation we had with, the inclusivity in the classroom, how you have the students at different levels at all times and how do you get them together on the same level? So like you said, the advanced students aren't bored, the slower students don't feel lost. And here we go with yet another way that Microsoft is really helping that to happen. So one of the accelerators that we didn't talk about was math. And this is really something that I'm really interested to hear this because I'm a word guy, not a numbers guy, being a professional communicator. And so when my kids come to me and say, I'm having a little challenge in math, or I'm having a lot of challenge in math, I'm right away sitting there thinking, okay, now how do I go get some YouTube videos to try to explain this to them? Because it has been so long since I've had to take any of this stuff, or maybe I didn't even take any of this stuff in the past. So, I'm really interested to hear what the Learning Accelerator does for math students.
Yeah, so there is definitely some really cool things with Math Coach and Math Progress, our accelerator, of course, for mathematics, and kind of our other foundational piece beside reading and comprehension, of course. And education, when it comes to math and math progress, can all be done within our Teams for Education platform. So we can have full-blown templates of examinations, or being able to do simple algebra or solve for X or linear equations or quadratic formulas. There's all tons of drop downs and topics that an educator can physically choose from, or of course, make all their own if they want. And what is really cool about that is they can allow the students to show their work, because part of Microsoft Teams, of course, is also built in things like a tool like Microsoft's OneNote, which works hand in hand here. So this would allow a student to show all their work as well as get on the spot reflection after they complete that question, or after, say, the quiz might be completed. They'll get on the spot feedback, and it allows an educator to see those things because the AI is able to understand the handwriting and the solution to that problem, and then kind of backtrack and give that instant feedback without ever an educator really touching that math equation or problem that they had assigned to the student. And I'll go one step further. You go, okay, so how does a student study for math? How do you or I help our children, do higher level algebra when we haven't taken it in, I don't know, let's be nice, 20 years. So, how do we, how do we make sure that happens? So there are tools built into Microsoft OneNote, for instance, called Math Assistant with equation tools. If you, and I'm sure you've used a touchscreen, whether that's a touchscreen laptop or something like a Surface, right? And Microsoft's OneNote is one of the programs that are part of our Microsoft 365 suite. And the big thing about OneNote is, of course, it is a digital notebook, and it's pretty much a limitless digital notebook that for your use. But you can take a pen like you would onto paper and write on that is touch screens, of course, that support pen or even finger, and you can actually write out a full-blown math equation. And then you can ask OneNote to help you solve it. And it will show you how to solve that equation step by step, like it was showing its work as if it was a student. You can then save that kind of step-by-step problem solve and practice it yourself next to it by hand and understanding the mechanisms of how to solve these math equations.
And see, again, that's certainly something that's going to help students, but even parents, because I will tell you again, when they come to me and say, I don't know how to solve this, and I look at them and I say, I don't know how to solve it either. And that's the thing. You can't just, used to be able to go to different calculator sites or something like that. But a lot of them they don't have that same functionality where if you could do it right in OneNote, and then you're not worried that you're going to, some site that's going to, download some kind of virus onto your computer. You're doing it right in the platform, and you're able to write that out and then have that step by step. I mean, that would teach them, but it would teach me as well.
Yeah. So I challenge our listeners that might have OneNote or something like that. Do something super duper crazy simple, right? Go into OneNote on your own time, maybe, and type in or write in x squared minus 64 equals 0 and see what comes up and solve for x. All you'd have to do is lasso that up and go to Math Assistant on the very top of OneNote and hit solve and see what happens.
I'm going to try that.
I think you should. I think everybody should. It's awesome.
I'm definitely going to try that. So this has been, Mitch, again, fantastic and again, quite frankly, mind-blowing, because I just cannot believe how much things have progressed. Certainly since the Stone Age when I was in school, but just over the past few years. And again, where we're learning that AI doesn't have to be the enemy of education and educators.
No, it definitely doesn't. And I think the other thing, if we kind of have last thoughts here, is AI is changing so rapidly, right? Something you read today or yesterday about AI, if again, we're not live, right? People hear us and everything, but even in the week it might take us to go from recording you and I right now here to, say, production, there could be new advancements in AI that we couldn't have fathomed of in the last 4 hours. Literally, that's how fast things are moving and how fast AI has been progressing and learning how to use it in different ways. And it's going to continue to evolve. And it truly is the next evolution of computing and productivity and problem solving. And it's, if we're not going to get on the wagon, it is very likely and very possible to be left behind.
No, and that's true. And I think that's the big thing with, taking a look at it as, again, you've got to get on that bandwagon, but you've got to stop seeing it as a detriment. You got to stop seeing it in the negative aspect of things, because it's really about, if you embrace it and you utilize it and you use it wisely, this is not something that's going to come along and take the place of teachers. You're not going to suddenly just walk into a classroom and see, a big interactive whiteboard there where it's going to start talking to the students and it's going to teach the lessons.
No, and I think it's really important that these learning accelerators and AI are a tool to help empower the learning process, right? Or do you help empower folks like ourselves in our careers? It is definitely never going to replace a human being educator, nor will it replace how learners learn, but they're going to be the tools that help us learn more efficiently and be able to be more productive at even our everyday, into our careers and lives and well beyond.
Very true. Very true. Mitch, this has been fantastic. Thank you again for sharing all this great information with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Technology Pulse podcast produced by DALY. Before we go, we would like to remind you of a few legal considerations. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of DALY or its leadership. This podcast is provided for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide legal, financial, or other professional advice. The content of this podcast is protected by copyright laws and may not be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted without the written permission of DALY Computers Inc. Any products, services, or other references mentioned in this podcast are for informational purposes only and do not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by DALY. Thank you again for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us at marketing@daly.com.